Up next, we got a CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre here. We've got a strap match, and interestingly, some new presentation for a strap match here between Drew and CM Punk, where now we've got lights posted up on every corner in red and green lights. Now, this is the first time I've ever seen something like this for a strap match. What did you think of the idea?
I was a bit confused at the beginning by this. I felt a little bit overcomplicated, and it's not my favorite kind of strap match, the four corners gimmick, particularly when it has to be explained constantly that, the competitor, if your competitor gets any offense in, then the lights all kind of reset. Mm-hmm. That feels a bit clunky. But as it went along, I got more into it. I got more comfortable, I guess, with the stipulation.
Yeah, so I think, for a lot of the people that might be listening to this right now, your immediate comparison points for something like this, in recent memory at least, is like AEW's versions of similar matches. We're talking either the sort of cowbell matches that we've seen, strap matches that we've seen, dog collar matches. Do those involve touching the corners? I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Maybe not that one. Okay. But those, I guess, are just a bit more straightforward with emphasis on the actual sort of like strap itself. This one was more, I guess, based on the touching of the corners and the lights. I don't know. I'm still kind of torn because on the one hand, they look like so sort of like ridiculous, and they kind of stand out. Like, I don't know, and to make the match look a little bit sillier. At the same time, I think they totally have a purpose, and they fulfill like a need to make the match a little bit clearer, like the scoreboard a little bit clearer. So I'm a little torn by it. I'm curious to know what the audience thinks. So basically, as Neil mentioned,
I'm sorry, Wade. I know you were in flow there. I think if you were there in person, these would be a great help.
Yes.
As opposed to having an on TV counter for the number of corners that have been touched. And I didn't mind when all three of them, when Punk was getting his tap in unbeknownst.
Right.
To Drew, when both lights came on, I thought that, okay, yeah. But I get what you were saying there about it. The presentation is sort of less serious with these big traffic lights in every corner, but
yeah. So as Neil mentioned, this is a strap match where if you have to touch, the rules stayed here right in the graphics. The only way to win is by touching all four corners of the ring uninterrupted in succession. So they made a big deal of alerting us the first time that this happened that the lights will reset if your opponent manages like a bit of offense on you. So for instance, if you got two corners touch, but your opponent punches you, then the lights have to reset. So I'm guessing that's taken from like traditional strap match rules too, but it's just something that I guess I've never necessarily internalized. So
same.
Required a bit of explanation, and we can assess about how clear and how effective everything was. So we got CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre here, strap match, traffic light match, whatever you want to call this. Drew touches the first corner, and then Punk interrupts it by hitting the GTS. So this is where Cole says that, hey, the one of the corner lights is supposed to turn off and reset. So Punk, instead of touching the turnbuckle at this point, decides to start whipping and attacking Drew. Crowd is very engaged, as they are, throughout the entire evening. They brawl onto the announce table where CM Punk regains control. Punk pulls the table from under the ring. Drew shoves it back in for some easy heel heat there. Drew grabs a chair, and at this point, CM Punk is bleeding on the outside. He gets back up and shows some blood on his forehead. Not sure how the blood managed to get there, but Drew did identify it, and he started attacking it, trying to open it up just a little bit more. It wasn't a huge, amount of blood or anything, but was at least evident for a good portion of the match. Punk again sets up the table on the floor. He gets back into the ring and eats a Claymore from Drew. Drew then touches the corners. He gets up to 3, but Punk rolls to the floor and drags Drew into a chair that Drew himself set up in the corner. Drew then sends Punk through a table on the floor. Drew has Punk in a fireman's carry as he's touching the corners himself, but Punk is following him, unbeknownst to Drew, touching the corners right after him. And this is where we learn that both men can concurrently build a streak of touching corners at the same time, right? So simply touching a corner does not interrupt your opponent's corner touching. You can both build up to at least 3 yourself, and that's what happens here. All 3 of them have touched all 3 corners, and as they struggle for the sudden death corner touch, they fight over the 4th, and a punch is thrown, and at this punch, I guess it's all reset. So, yeah, I didn't love all of this. I found all of that just a little bit awkward, but maybe that's just the problem with the actual stipulation itself.
I think so.
Yeah, they both deliver double boots to initiate a double down, and with the both of them lying down, Punk decides to use this moment to give us a Bret Hart tribute by giving his Bret Hart British Bulldog entry into the sharpshooter from both men lying down that we saw at the 92 Wembley match. Drew taps and gets to the ropes, but it's no use, of course. Punk lets go of the sharpshooter and begins to touch the corners, but Drew cuts him off with a neckbreaker. Drew then takes out the bracelet. He hits the Claymore to Punk. He starts touching the corners and gets up to 3, but Punk cuts him off again with a GTS. Punk hits another GTS. He touches the 2 corners, then stops to hit another GTS. He goes to touch a 3rd corner and gives a big pause to the crowd as he decides to deliver one more GTS to an already lifeless Drew McIntyre. He then grabs the bracelet and finally touches the 4th turnbuckle to win this match in 19 minutes and 15 seconds. Your thoughts, Neil?
Yeah. The crowd seemed into it, like, as you say, they were into everything, and the crowd elevated this show full stop. But the stipulation here and the amount of explanation needed for the lights and when and why the lights go on and off, I felt there was just a hint of silliness about that presentation that took away from what has been one of the best feuds, I think, in either of the big promotions this year. So I wasn't completely satisfied by this stipulation, what this stipulation did to the feud. But the finish was good,
Yeah, I too thought I think the need to even explain about some of the specifics of the strap match took away from, I think, some of the immediate sort of like visceral violence that I think you might have anticipated from a match type like this. So I don't love this stipulation at all. Maybe there's a way to even simplify it that much further, but I kind of thought it was a little bit clunky, and maybe they, if this is traditional rules that they're basing all of this on, they might have, we can maybe say they did their best at trying to convey what maybe initially are kind of awkward, sort of rules attached to it all.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I tend to prefer, like, certainly the dog collar match, maybe even a lot of Cody's like strap matches that we've seen. Those just in some ways felt a little bit more straightforward and maybe not as produced, not requiring as much production. In terms of like level of violence and aggression, I think they did a decent job of, like, certainly delivering a lot more physicality than their SummerSlam match. By the end of this, I thought you got the sense that both men were completely exhausted from the battle, and that it was a hard-earned victory for CM Punk. So I thought it worked in that sense. Now, it was still a relatively safe match, certainly by like modern standards, but it still gave you that war-like, exhaustive feeling, at least in comparison to, their last match. In terms of story, CM Punk finally gets the bracelet back so we could end that chapter. But does this end the feud? I mean, I think most are anticipating a Bad Blood rematch in the Hell in a Cell. What do you think, Neil?
I don't think it ends the feud, and I don't think it should end the feud. It wouldn't be a fitting end to it. And it's been such a good grudge between these two that I think this will continue. Drew isn't just going to walk away from it, having been stopped from his big moments so many times in storyline by Punk. So I wouldn't think this is a fitting end to the feud. So no, I think it will continue.
Well, I mean, naturally they're 1-on-1, so you would think a third match is in store, and I can't think of like a hotter program to put into a Hell in a Cell than this. I think the question is like, what is the thing that they're going to do to build interest, to put the feud into a Hell in a Cell now that the bracelet saga, quote unquote, might be over. I guess Drew can always steal it back, but I would like to see them move away from the bracelet, as I think a lot of people would, and I would like to see him actually do something even more dastardly. Yeah. Maybe this is where we finally get an appearance from AJ Lee. Maybe Larry makes an appearance somehow. Go right to the source. Forget the bracelet. Just just threaten the people whose names are on the bracelet.
I'd love to see that. And yes, we had Drew on the post show losing his mind last time. And manhandling Adam Pearce and all of that. Let's get back to that kind of level of the visceral and away from the bracelet. And I think there's umpteen things they could do. Ideally, yes, it would be tremendous to get AJ and or both Larry involved as well. But I agree with you too about the physicality. They did get it in, particularly before the bell rang. And the blood, whether that was just good fortune or deliberate, added to it. And it showed, again, this change in philosophy where they zoom in on it. They're not trying to avoid it, even though it wasn't gushing by any stretch. There was a time not that long ago when if that was rerun, it would be shown in black and white, because they just won't show red liquid. Yeah.
Or they would stop the match to make sure the blood was fixed, or the cut was fixed before proceeding. Now I get the sense maybe the internal mandate is, if it happens to happen, then we'll take advantage of it, but we might not initiate it. Now, I don't exactly know the source of tonight's blood, whether or not it was intentional or not, but they did take advantage of it once it was seen.
Yeah. And just one more thing. I agree that it was a safe enough match, and I want that for CM Punk because he has shown since his comeback to AEW that through bad fortune or age or a combination of many factors, he's been injured, several times, and ones that have taken him out. You don't want this guy on the shelf, you want him to be able to perform. So I'm happy enough with safe-ish matches, as long as they keep this guy in circulation.
If you like this video, consider joining our Patreon, the Post Wrestling Cafe. Multiple bonus podcasts every week, ad-free shows, and access to our full archive. Otherwise, a like and subscribe is much appreciated. Thank you for watching.